Hello, welcome to this evening's virtual event with Brookline Booksmith. My name is Bonnie and I'm the Assistant Events Director here at the store. If you're familiar with Brookline Booksmith, welcome back. And if this is the first time you're hearing about us, welcome. We're very happy to have you all join our community this evening, and we really appreciate your support of these authors' work and an independent bookstore through your purchases and attendance. This is the second installment of a new monthly reading series taking place on the third Thursday of each month here at Brookline Booksmith. I'm so excited to be able to expand our poetry programming at the store and celebrate the work of artists from Massachusetts and beyond. And I really encourage you to support the work of these poets in whatever way you can, whether that means buying books, checking them out online, or just making a lot of noise in the chat for their incredible reading. And now to introduce our authors. Natalie Wee is a queer creator whose work explores themes of race, gender, queerness, and nationhood, and is deeply informed by grassroots communities. She has written 2 poetry collections, Our Bodies and Other Fine Machines, and Beast at Every Threshold. She was previously the managing poetry editor of Loose Leaf magazine, which was run by the Project 40 Collective, an interdisciplinary Toronto-based Pan-Asian artist community. She was the winner of the 2019 Blue Mesa Review Summer Contest for Poetry and nominated for the Pushcart Prize, among other honors and awards. You can find her writing in Rumpus, Asian American Writers Workshop, The Margins, and Prism International, among others. Born in Singapore to Malaysian parents, Natalie is currently a setter in Toronto. Janika Oza is a writer based in Toronto. She is the winner of the 2022 O. Henry Prize for Short Fiction, congratulations, by the way, as well as the 2020 Kenyon Review Short Fiction and the 2019 Malahat Review Open Season Award in Fiction. Her stories and essays appear in the Kenyon Review, Catapult, the Best Small Fictions of 2019 Anthology, and others. She's received fellowships and support from VONA, Tin House, One Story, the Malay Colony, the Toronto Arts Council, and several others. Her debut novel, A History of Burning, is forthcoming from Grand Central Publishers in the US in May 2023, or McClelland and Stewart in Canada for any Canadian folks watching. Jody Chan is a writer, drummer, organizer, and therapist based in Toronto. Their writing explores themes of home, belonging, kinship, queerness, and madness/disability. They are the author of the poetry collections Haunt, All Our Futures, and most recently, Sit. In 2018, they won the St. Louis Book Award, and in 2021, they won the Trillium Award for Poetry. They are also a performing member of Raising Asian Women Taiko Drummers, or RAW. Their work has received fellowships and support from VONA, Tin House, Feminist Art Collective, Toronto Arts Council, and others. They were the poetry editor for the online literary journal Hematopoiesis. Am I saying that word right? Hopefully that is about the best I can do. And Jody's writing can, of course, be found in Black Warrior Review, Vita Review, and Tinderbox Poetry Journal, among others. And last but not least, Brandon Wint, who is going to be joining us in a few minutes, is a poet, spoken word artist, and multidisciplinary collaborator based in Western Canada. Born in Ontario, he uses poetry and spoken word to attend to the joy and devastation and inequity associated with this era of human and ecological history. He is the author of the poetry collection Divine Animal. Brandon has toured internationally to perform his work, including visiting a little close by the United States, but also places as far away as Australia, Lithuania, and Jamaica. His poems and essays have been published in national anthologies, including The Great Black North, Contemporary African Canadian Poetry, and Black Writers Matter. In addition to his writing, Brandon is a sought-after arts educator and event organizer, presenting workshops and keynote addresses at festivals such as the Canadian Festival of Spoken Word and organizing cabarets such as the Cookies and Tea concert series in Ottawa. We are so thrilled to have all 4 of you here. Everyone, please give a warm welcome in the chat to Brandon, Jody, Janika, and Natalie.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be part of this reading and in the spirit of friendship and getting to be in this space with three people whose work I really admire and whose friendship I really cherish. I'm going to share three pieces and I chose one of them for each of you. So I'm going to share my screen and for an access doc so folks can follow along if that's helpful. I think Bonnie is also going to drop the link in the chat. So if anybody finds it helpful to follow along, please do. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so this first poem is from my book Sick, and it's from a series of poems about Teresa Teng, who is a Taiwanese singer and kind of really influential artist in East Asia, Southeast Asia. And I chose this one because I was thinking about Natalie's book, Beast at Every Threshold, and how you use kind of pop culture in a way to kind of redefine and reinvent queer diasporic mythologies. Yeah. Teresa Teng marries everyone at the NHK Tokyo Hall. In 1985, in a bride dress, I beckoned the concert to a close, flanked by the camera, head bowed to the conductor. My veil flurries off white yoke, longer than my stems, in a fog around my feet, arms adorned in velvet, gloves, my crown a diamond globe, black boots and blush. This concert, the rehearsal for a wedding I've nearly but never had in real life. Someone bouquets the flowers flung by my boldest fans, all men and much older, a reverse dowry I'm not surprised to receive. As for the others like me, better suited to loving from afar, I'm half gone already, diminished by the soot of static on their screens. Is it important if I want to be here? I take requests, rise to the encore even though my memory's lost, the lyrics to my oldest hits, the ones they all want to hear. My voice stills the stadium to a sad hum, each note on my tongue yielding to their desire for eternity with no goodbyes. Their bird went to the microphone, solitary orchid pressed and forbidden to wilt or leave the stage. This next piece is an excerpt from a longer piece that I wrote, kind of hybrid piece that does talk about suicidality. So just want to give people that note, and if you need to kind of check out or take a little space, when this piece is over, I can like hold my hand up like this so you can maybe keep the video on and then you can know when to come back. This one I chose for Janika because our friendship and the care and tenderness in it is something that I really had to keep in my mind and in my heart when I was writing this piece for myself. And that also has helped me survive many times. So, and this one has a couple of epigraphs, one from Leah Lakshmi Pepsna-Samarasena, one from Saidiya Hartman. I think that might be it for this excerpt actually. So yeah. Make me something beautiful. Queer femme suicide is not a side note to the struggle. Wanting to die transforms time and space in that there is no longer a map. That home is on the other side of leaving, that growing up I folded into corners to not be seen. To take the dog out, to breathe, to bathe, to unplug the sink. The tasks of basic survival begin to stretch out across days. During an episode, I wander phoneless, shoeless for hours, trying to explain myself to myself. Like falling in love, wanting to die is considered feminine, weak. My father asks why I never visit anymore. The blast radius of suicidality is that the one in pain becomes a scapegoat. I let the kombucha ferment too long, find maggots in the SCOBY. The house consumes its own light. Dreaming otherwise is as essential as food for us to survive. Who swim nude in the river in September, who sweat the eggplant overnight, who amass inhalers, benzos, antipsychotics to share, who goodbye their last grandparent over Zoom, who know the hotline numbers and that they are not enough, who populate the Google Doc believing meeting agendas are an investment in the future, who beg prescription refills, unashamed by need, who bleed their radiant blood for tests every other month, who know not to hospitalize, who believe the days ahead of me, who drive out to Tommy Thompson, who gather rocks for grounding, the memory of August sunset on geese on water. We stumbled on 2 cottontails that day, nearly tangling underfoot, who tether me, who mother me from breath to breath, when I lose time, when I don't know that I am, who offer me a room to stay, who offer me their backs to touch, who make my bed while I'm buying groceries, who nourish the conditions for dreaming, knowing someday the time for dreaming will be. A radical kinship, an interdependent sociality, a politics of care. Contradictions in suicide intervention. It is not your responsibility to save anyone. It is not revolutionary or radical to let someone die who is already abused and neglected by the systems we live in. Hiding your pain can kill you. Being perceived as too much can kill you. It is okay to feel nothing. It is okay not to feel. I am afraid of death. I am not afraid to die. This poem changes nothing. This poem has a demand. A demand requires a target. A target is a flag, feet planted in a beautiful garden. You cannot bypass the grief. The grief must move through you. The grief must sink, sting, smolder, saturate, settle, sediment, sunder, before it can mother you. We humans, needful creatures, need others to survive. No one can save you but yourself. It is not your responsibility to save anyone. It is not revolutionary to let yourself die. In the quiet season, there are questions to confront. A demand requires the discipline to dream. For a time, I cannot be left alone with pen or pill. I tried to break a street lamp with my head. Then I named myself after you. Space maker, time taker, ceaseless heart. For now, I know I'm not ready to be an ancestor. My grief about femme suicide is the garden where our future grows. The task merely is to make possible. Finally, I can admit, you and you and you, gardeners of the inside joke, the living room institution. I dream of care that has nothing to do with survival. Your life is a world worth living in. Oh, and that's the end of that piece. So for folks who are, tuning back in. And the last piece I chose for Brandon, and I was thinking about just feeling really inspired by the way you've been working with music and video and so much collaboration with different voices and different disciplines. And so I wanted to share this piece. It's actually an audio piece that's recorded, so I'm gonna just play it, and I think the sound will work, that I shared my computer sound. One sec, I'm actually gonna stop screen sharing and share it again so I can make sure. Okay.
At the end of the world, let there be you, saint of the blue peaks by the ocean where we began, a trail of hands, narrating in the context of ache or tomorrow, crowned with August and salt. I wake in a puddle of ghosts. I hunt the wilderness in myself. These ever-blooming wounds, the damp and swelling mud, blue hyacinths, rustle nude inside the blue water, the way old grief is gentle. To answer your question, I refuse. History is a song, new name for a myth already lived in. The thought of losing sight of shore you know no one can prepare for. Hair falling in torrents, roses of lips, the plummeted paper planes, the angry weather. There is no prayer or pill for this. Ocean, don't be afraid. Ocean, don't be afraid. Ocean, don't be afraid. Ocean, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Ocean, don't be afraid. Ocean, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Ocean, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Alive means you swallow each day like a stone. I too am built out of a question about the sky. If language can hybrida, anemone, ever be enough to repair, begin again, where everything you've lost is washed ashore. I'm building the boat. I believe I exist, a historian of my own silence. Think of a needle dropped into the sea, the moon, a wound on the lake, our footprints to not follow. If you don't have blood on your hands by the end of this, you weren't listening. If you don't have blood on your hands, if you don't have blood on your hands, if you don't have blood on your hands, you weren't listening. By the end of this, you weren't listening. If you don't have blood, if you don't have blood on your hands, if you don't have by the end of this, you weren't listening. By the end of this, you weren't listening. Inside every world, there is another world trying to get out. Warm and blood close, sunglass breaking. Like the light, I am scattered, and what is left is only water.
Thank you, everyone. Oh, and I'll pass to Janika.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Jody, for that incredibly beautiful and haunting reading. And that was incredible. So thank you all for being here. Thanks to Brookline Booksmith for bringing me in, and to the other poets that are here tonight. It's really a dream to share this space. So I am going to be bringing the prose to this poetry evening. As Bonnie mentioned earlier, my novel is coming out in May, and this is actually my first time reading from the finished book in a public event. So it's a sneak peek for all of you, and it's also a really special moment for me. So thank you all for being here. So my novel, A History of Burning, tells the story of 4 generations of one Indo-Ugandan family across about 100 years and multiple forced displacements and lands. So it's a novel that's about complicity and resistance. It's about what it means to belong to a family and to a community. And it's about the stories that we do and don't tell. So I'm just going to read right from the beginning, the first few pages. So no context needed, but this novel is told from 9 perspectives. And this first chapter is told from the perspective of Pirbai, who is a young boy in India, and it takes place in 1898. The last day Pirbai spent in Gujarat was ignited by a sun that could not last. The heat was a dry beast, scorching the fields yellow as Gora hair. He eased himself onto a step by the water's edge, letting his chappals graze the foam. Jamnagar offered him nothing. For as long as he could remember, every day was the same. By foot, or sometimes hitching a ride on the back of a cart, he wandered the streets, pleading for work. Today, the landowner barely raised his eyes, and he knew he was probably one of many boys turned away. Look around you, Dikro, the man had muttered. Do you see any rice, any grain? Dry, all dry. Come back after monsoon. When Pirbai pointed to the white buds bursting across a field, the man laughed until he coughed. His lips cracked and blood pulsed on his stained teeth. Those are for British exports, not for us. That morning, Pirbai had watched his ma ask the gods for forgiveness, praying over his middle sister, whose bones clacked as though loose inside her skin. For days, her body had expelled water, sweat water, wee-wee water, chi water, and now she was limp and dry as the crops outside. When his ma had turned to him and told him to try Jamnagar today, that a neighbor's son had found work there last week, Pirbai had imagined saying no. He had thought about rolling over on his sleeping mat, refusing to leave home, and playing gilli danda with his siblings in the deadened grass instead. They would fight over who got to be striker and who fielder, and as the eldest, Pirbai would get first pick. He would strike the gilli all the way to the sea, and his siblings would whistle, ma looking on in awe. But he was 13, the oldest son, no longer a boy. If he returned bearing nothing again, ma would suck in her cheeks, then silently scrape her portion onto his plate, a reminder of the strength he would need for tomorrow. Pai, his mother always called him, brother, reminding him of who he was, to whom he was responsible. The reddening sky warned him to start his journey back, but the wind pulling off the water stilled him. He pressed his palms to his face, the imprint of the sun behind his eyelids, a single ember. When he opened his eyes, there was a man, a merchant, his belt buckle polished and skin supple and oiled so that its brown shone almost gold. The man shifted a lump of tobacco in his cheek, exposing teeth like chipped bricks. Looking for work, Dikro? Pirbai nodded, eyeing him, too weary from the day to believe. The man opened his fist for a second. It was long enough for Pirbai to spy a pile of coins, grimy but solid, winking in the late afternoon light. You and I, we were meant to find one another, the man said, and pressed a coin into Pirbai's palm. Pirbai closed his fingers over the skin-warmed metal, unable to resist its unnatural weight. You have work? The man pointed out at the water. I'm looking for boys just like you, young, tough, hardworking. You'll work hard, no? Now Pirbai focused, aware that this was his chance. He raked a hand through his hair, relieved that he still appeared strong and capable, even as his stomach curled around itself. He smiled to show the man his teeth, that they were straight and square, his best feature, a sign of inner health, his ma always bragged. I'll work the hardest, he said, and he meant it. The man clapped him on the shoulder and fished into his pocket, drawing out two things. First, a small tin of tobacco, which he flipped open and offered to Pirbai. Tentatively, Pirbai accepted, taking a pinch and dabbing it inside his lip as he'd seen so many men do, languorous, restless men, hungry-eyed. His heart leapt, knowing that he might no longer be one of them. Beneath the tin of tobacco, the man shook out a long strip of paper. It was crisp and covered in small black etchings. Pirbai's spirit sank. a test. He had hardly been to school, never learned to read. Now he would have to prove himself smart enough for the job, and he would fail. The man passed him the sheet of paper. He didn't ask Pirbai to read the words, or to recite a poem like the wealthy boys could, or to take up a pen and write. Instead, he produced a small cap of ink and tapped it open, gesturing to the line at the end of the page. "If you want to work, you just need to put your thumbprint here," he said. Marveling at his luck, Pirbai let his right thumb sink into the pool of black, all the way until it hit the bottom. It was nearly dark when they climbed onto the boat. The man hadn't said where they were going, only that Pirbai should wait until nightfall when they would begin. Briefly, Pirbai imagined his ma worrying where he was, but he had asked a cart driver who was traveling through Porbandar to send word to his family. He pictured the driver calling to his ma from the cart, how his eldest sister would rush to offer him a glass of salted chash for bringing such prosperous news. How proud they would be. The dhow was small and wooden, and it creaked as Pirbai and the others slotted themselves into the narrow hull, side by side like sacks of loot. Some were boys who looked no older than 10, others fully grown men, bearded, speaking of wives and children. Pirbai recognized them all, though he knew none of them. Like him, they were all thin, dusty, made twitchy from months, perhaps years of searching. The air glimmered with possibility. Pirbai felt a greasy fullness, having bought some batita bhajias with the paisa the merchant gave him, upon the man's insistence that he would need energy for the journey. The oil had curdled on his tongue as he thought of his middle sister, who hadn't swallowed food in days, but he forced the thick mash down, sucking away the salt that burned his lips. Now, Pirbai didn't see the merchant. Instead, 3 Goras stepped onto the dhow, their shoulders broad and uniforms crisp. Captains, Pirbai thought, British. The men were speaking, laughing, but the words that tumbled from their lips were unintelligible. He knew only a few words in English, gleaned here and there on his searches for work. Hello, thank you, country, bread. And he heard none of these now. "I heard there's work in Karachi. That's maybe where they're taking us," the boy beside Pirbai said, scratching at a constellation of mosquito bites on his forearm. His name was Jamil, and he had skin like midnight. Pirbai's was more like water-soaked wood. Pirbai's lungs swelled with relief to know he wasn't the only one unaware of their destination. Not that it mattered. By morning he would be working, pocketing rupees to bring home to his ma, enough that they could buy medicine for his sister, maybe even call on a doctor, enough that they could buy milk and lot from the shop without having to sweep the floors and clean the toilet pit for a discount, or worse, buying the items on credit that his mother repaid later, at night, in secret, though Pirbai had always known. A breeze lifted the hair from his forehead, and he tasted salt as a spray of seawater covered the men like a shroud. As the dhow groaned into the water, Pirbai watched the oil lamps on the shore of Gujarat flicker, then fade. I'll stop there. Thank you. And I'll bring in Natalie next.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. That was genuinely so beautiful. And we're very lucky to get the world premiere of your book. Thank you for sharing space with me. Tonight, just like Jody, I've chosen poems that were very much about this sense of joy, abundance, community that I'm feeling right now. And I'd like to start off with one of the poems from my book. Immigrant obeyed. Immigrant obeyed. I knew you first as the shape of some bird, and then the warble that quickens air into spring. My throat overflows with the lullaby of we who name our motherlands the place where sunset meets the sea. We for whom maps hold no wonder our bodies can't outmatch. It's magic how another diasporic darling makes where are you from sound like sisterhood, instead of a reminder I'm not really from here. Here, where someone's dreams brought us. The centuries gave us each other, and then the word we, the small mercies of those who soften days into instant Maggie on blue ceramic, hum my grandmother's favorite song and peel the spiderwebbed shell of boiled eggs, the way one would pluck the bluest fish scale from a child's mouth, delicately, with fingers that refuse stillness and silence. We who belong to ourselves in any city, we of elsewhere, and I'll keep you safe. We, a people of longing and children of belief. When asked, where are you from again, we answer with some place named after each other. My next poem is I Always Bet on Losing Dogs, after the Mitski song, yes. I was bet on losing dogs. That one time the pub beneath us was on fire and she didn't make a sound. Not when opaque smoke climbed into our second-story apartment like a thundercloud over parched grass. Not when the fire trucks pulled up and my friend said, over the call punctuated by siren and enough heat to gnaw through a cool March evening, damn, what's that sorry excuse of a dog good for? But I understand. I too have cradled my loves to sleep in the arms of a burning kingdom. I have kissed the ash of dreams and knelt before a door, obedient when a given name leashed me by the hair. Sure, she can't fetch, can't roll over, can't stay, but every time we leave, she transforms into a shrine of longing, the truest weather. Who here hasn't launched themselves at the slightest whisper in a house with no shadows? Who can deny having tried to summon love from air with teeth alone? We return and she muscles back from the dead, trembles until some god bestows the mercy of a palm upon her head. After some years of this, it must be easy to mistake hell for an empty room. As flames licked us out of the spit-slick hour, I imagine she curled in my lap, warm and finally satisfied, and thought to herself, this is a dream, Claude, from every prayer made with my head to the ground. Yes, this is as good a day as any to lay down and die. My next poem is about meme culture, just because I feel like, especially with the pandemic, we've all been sending each other a lot of memes. Some of those in attendance included have received my memes, so this is for you. Inside joke. About that time with the cat and the can of tuna, which ended with me meowing up a tree. Did you know cats learn to meow by imitating the cry of a human child? Each sound an imperfect, tender concession. We meow back, Ouroboros. We meow back. Wiki says it's mirroring. We echo what we love to keep it. I love it when I text ANJ, usual tonight, and we all reach Rolsan for dim sum at 7. My baby sends a pic of 2 otters and the word us, translated, we exist in every iteration of touch made possible. You know, there's a sign to the sequence of butterfly emoji, rocket emoji, flamingo emoji. A pic of Patrick Star shoveling dirt in his mouth can mean I'm upset right now or attention, please. So understanding memes is a kind of alchemy. I'm H.O. After finals, we'd toss our textbooks and scream, "No more mugging." My ma was mugged on Adelaide, as sobbed that Toronto winter. Depending on who's talking, a sound, image, or action has infinite lives. So fuck language purists. Goodbye only exists because someone wrote "God be with ye" in shorthand. BTS said there's a whale that speaks only to itself, born with everything it knows already in its blood. Every instance I wrote to reach you through this page is its own kind of holy. TBH, we are so damn lucky to be loved like this. With endless ways to bless one another, our voice is crowned with something new and tender and no one else's. And my last poem tonight is a love poem, and it is "In My Next Life as a Fruit Tree." In my next life as a fruit tree, which by all accounts is a foolish aspiration, considering deforestation rates and forest fires, if there's a choice, why not be the pangolin that wades through a mangrove whispering gnats? Why not the wind chime overlooking an occupied birdhouse, or the spoon nestled in a parrot's fresh-made broth, or the signal emitted by a distant star that'll touch the earth only once, but it's clear, isn't it? How these are infinite mirrors, everything chrysalis, relentless and becoming, and watch me become bedrock, root of the root, wild and wildling. Who knows which sweet burden my tree will bear, jambu aye, or starfruit, or mandarin orange, but I'll flower one crop each day for as long as the palm reaching upward needs something to adore it. And there is, for one moment, relief because I am and am enough. So forget theories of sorrow and hellfire and brimstone at the final circle of the earth. If I must believe in anything, I choose this. My lover whispering, in my next life, I want to be the bird that rests on your branches, knowing the whole time, in my next life, I want to be, is already a complete sentence. Thank you.
I suppose I'm meant to take the floor now. Hello, everyone. I am as I see the comments rolling in. I want to express solidarity with all of the commenters who are thoroughly overwhelmed emotionally. I am also thoroughly overwhelmed. My name is Brandon Wint. This reading has been such a humble beauty already that it is hard to find the words. I'm speaking to you from my mother's house in Richmond Hill, Ontario, which is a place that I haven't been in 3 years. And so, yeah, this entire coalescence of beauty and poetry is just a lot right now. I almost wept already, and I haven't said anything. So thank you all. Thank all of the readers and poets who've already spoken today. Continuing the theme of love poetry, I wanted to begin with a breakup poem, which is always a love poem. This is called "I Had a Dream for Us." I had a dream for us, a private world, fragrant as a garden, luscious as spring. I had a dream of us rising as sunflowers twinned, stems entwined like dancers' limbs, thoughtless, but for the logic of joy. I had a dream of us in a river, a strait, a channel, as water folded over us like hands, like prayer. I had a dream of us swimming nearly naked, our bodies slick, lithe as seaweed. I had a dream of us praying, silent in our devotions. Our gods may be separate, but alive. I had a dream of us as children, cherubs, babies, ageless, fattened by laughter, feasting always on mirth, I had a dream where stars did not blacken, did not char our hands. You plucked the stars like fruit, fed me from their nectar. My mouth was sweet with wine, electric. I had a dream of us as drunkards, babbling like elders, like singers, like water over stones. I dream of us in a garden of our making. I dreamed my hands thumbing the soil. I dream of us kissing, always kissing, the soil of us, naked of smell. My hands, elegant, stained by earth, and you in the garden, fertile as spring, with me, with our mouths, planting seeds. Thank you. This next poem is called Beneath the Surface. At night, a spider large and red as two wild berries struggles for hours to scale the curve of our bathtub before rappelling blindly down the esophagus of the drain. This morning, two horseflies adhered in the straddle of lovemaking, locked in the pleasure zenith of their brief lives. Let the sun drool the ridges of their backs. Even things the tiny fishnet of my intellect cannot hold are bustling with the movement of subtle affairs. Naturalists say each tree is given a heartbeat. Every forest, a network of relation as complex as any expressed by blood. From my balcony, I glimpse the underbelly of a pigeon in flight between rooftops and wonder whether birds, the most common of surviving dinosaurs, miss the unchallenged power of their ancestors. I remember my friend, a biologist, who recalled the startling fact that sharks are an older species than the existence of trees. And I think of the smooth, blunt head of a great white, its flash of endless teeth furrowing the cyan plain of the Atlantic. My fear is not of the shark's mouth or its primordial nose for blood, but of its memory, its mastery of sunken pavilions, the dark worlds we cannot touch with our naked breath, and how little we know of why anything survives. This next poem is called Water Dance, inspired mostly by, I guess by Beyonce, but really just by moments of ecstatic feminine power, which Beyonce is known to beautifully incite, I would say. And so this is my interpretation of such moments. I've heard my sister's frenzy, singing to summon Orishas to an ocean center. I have heard then joy crest like a wave, pulse sonorous, symbol the earth. I have seen the goddess open like a full sky, a celestial mouth, seen her spindle lightning to a single crackling note. Have you heard, brother, the song that melts the nightclub to honey, that slicks the walls to glistening like the labor of 1,000 bees? Have you heard the trumpet moan, cry out, torch the evening red, the flute shrill with pleasure, plume the air with orgiastic witness? Do you see, sister, the songs of praise misting the windows of this temple? Look how a single quill of sound can read my limbs ecstatic. And what is a body but divine machinery, tuned finely as a cello's bow, the pleasure's asking. Look how the goddess uses me. Look how the goddess uses me. Look how I billow with the breath of unwritten song. Turn your head. How many instruments we are. Feel the room sway. Roll at our insistence like thunder through graying loom of cloud. Together, aren't we as irresistible as rain? Is heaven a symphony, an angelic gushing? Look how firmament wells with the water of our chorus. Aren't we a storm when we move and the sky trembles, torrents our relation? Look how the world shifts, sister. Look how the world shifts when the goddess blows. And lastly, as a visibly disabled poet and human being. It's kind of a personal journey of healing to simply embody myself, to inhabit my body in a full way. And it's a incomplete, imperfect process, but I try to write poems that evoke in me or inspire me towards deeper embodiment. My favorite poem of those is this next one called Body and Prayer. Oh body, rustle the air, bless dandelions with your long shadow, toss your reflected gaze into jars of honey, offer your fingertips like figs to the mouths of lovers, gather in your hair the ticker tape of cherry blossoms, give your scent to water, to a river, a tincture of your held breath. In every gesture, swim, make the chest a splintered sea, be a moonlight, a devotion tireless as winter. Be, if you must, a singular anthem, soften the brutally human, sing with the corvids instead. Body, I unleash you from mere puppetry of flesh, unspool you, unscorn you, unmake your map of bruise, blood and dance you, nectar you wholly, unghost you, conjure and mystique you, unmyth you, elastic your bones, luster you, incant your latent shades, mango scent you, lilac your hair, tender skin you, essential you in oils, anthem and voice you, intone you, spark you divine with psalms. I untether you, body, from museum of race, unchain you from treadmill of capital, release you now into fields of marigold, the archways of sunflowers bending, body, tired animal. I fill your mouth with water, blue silk you, in spirals of wind, body. I reserve an anthem for joy, though it has no words. When I sing through my closed mouth, song wells in my eyes, and the winged insects who sleep at midnight under porch light stretch themselves to hear. In the shadows of skyscrapers and the loom of blue glass towers, I stir the listless downtown avenues with an aria of footsteps, the instrument of my breathing, rattling trees. I reserve an anthem private as bedrooms, where unseeable verses tumble from my body's every gesture, and a single finger raised into the heat of my wife's waist becomes jazz, even as I sleep and mosquitoes trouble the stillness of my face. I sing a hymn for the unseen world that holds together this human dance, my entire frame a grateful mouth, gushing quivered notes. I wake daily into this anthem, the chorus of my life. Thank you for having me. Thank you for listening. It's been a pleasure.
Wow, incredible. Thank you to the four of you for sharing such beautiful work with us and for being a part of this event. I'm stunned and delighted. So thank you for joining us. We do have some audience questions. So we have a few minutes for Q&A. And I also want to invite audience members, if you have questions for any of our authors, definitely feel free to drop them in that Q&A box. But yeah, we'll take a few minutes to answer some questions and go from there. So first we have a question from Aaliyah, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. They ask, for each of you, what is the hardest part of your writing process and what is the most beautiful part? I love that question. And feel free, anyone can jump in once we can do it sort of loosey-goosey.
I'll say that for me, one of the hardest parts, or like a moment that I can dread or like fear, is like the moment between kind of writing the first draft and then going back and editing. It's like looking in the mirror, or like hearing myself in a recording. It's like, that's what I look like. And yeah, I think sometimes getting stuck on the editing because actually like not enough time has passed between writing it for me to actually have processed and to be able to like discover something new in it, or there's like actually something that I needed to experience and learn in my life kind of outside of poetry for me to be able to go back to that poem. So I think, yeah, giving myself that acceptance and not kind of rushing through and being impatient to like turn this thing into a product. And yeah, so that moment is is hard but also beautiful, and lots of beautiful things. But I think one thing that's coming to mind right now is actually reading. Like I love the part of the process of writing that's reading. So if I'm like in the middle of writing a poem where I kind of have an idea, and it's like stuck in my head, so kind of whatever I'm reading or watching or doing kind of gets filtered through like the lens of that poem for a while, and it's just like a very like a fun place to be for me, a really creative and generative place, and also somewhere where I feel like the possibility of all different kinds of connections, and also where I get to kind of like weave in lots of different people's voices, and influences into my work. Mm-hmm.
At the risk of sounding pretentious, I want to say that the most beautiful thing and the most difficult thing are the same for me, in the sense that just the act of like deep vulnerability is, scary but also thrilling whenever it happens. So that is to say, like, the beauty and the challenge of poetry is uh, not just having something to say, but having something to say that does justice to like the vulnerability and nuance that I'm capable of as a human being. And so like when I tap into something that feels both like honest and worth sharing, like that's the moment where I sort of my body sort of fills with an uncontainable energy, and that uncontainable energy like becomes the poem or becomes the initial stage of the writing process. So yeah, accessing vulnerability and like touching something close to the bottommost part of my humanity is like, yeah, both the difficulty and the pleasure of being a poet.
Natalie or Janika, do you have anything you want to add about your the most beautiful and or the hardest part of your process?
Janika, would you like to go first?
No, you can go for it.
Okay. I think the part for me, the most difficult part is figuring out what I want a poem or a piece of work to do. I think writing it is one thing, but after that, I'm like, what do I actually want to, like, what do I want this piece of art that I'm putting in the world, what do I want it to achieve? And sometimes the life that this thing has to live is entirely like it's sort of separate and not necessarily aligned with the way I wrote it. And then I have to be like, what are the degrees of separation between the way it was written and what it needs to achieve, and how can I bring it there? For example, is there something about the form that I need to change? Is there something about the medium itself that needs to be questioned? And that's, I think it's very hard to figure that out sometimes. Yeah, what I think is really the most beautiful thing is being able to learn so much from other writers and creators around us. Sometimes I write things in unusual forms and then I'm told that there's a name for this thing. And I think it's so beautiful that someone has already invented this really wonderful thing and I'm just like joining the party. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll just add on about the beauty, kind of bringing together what Jody and Natalie both said about the beauty in reading other people's work and in knowing that other people are kind of mulling over similar ideas or questions. And I think something that has been really beautiful in the writing process for me has been finding other writers as well who are, and finding community in other writers and being able to kind of share that process when a lot of writing also feels very isolated or just kind of like sunk deep into my own head. It can be a very beautiful and really necessary reminder being in community with other writers and knowing that we all kind of share a sense, some kind of sense of wanting to do this work and believing in it, believing that it can do something. Yeah, and yeah, I'll leave it there.
Absolutely. What a wonderful sort of variety of answers too. I think there's so much, just goes to show that, of course, there are, of course, the hard parts, but also so much beauty to be found in the process, even in spite of, or maybe perhaps because of that difficulty. We have another audience question, and this is our last one, so I want to make sure we have a chance to answer if it's okay with y'all if we go a little late. Does that sound good? Okay. So Siri asked, or rather, Siri asked on behalf of Emmanuel, what have you learned about your own writing voice lately?
I will say that for me, I don't really know that I have a writing voice. I've begun to move into a more interdisciplinary space, which means I'm just like doing stuff like painting and pottery. And it feels very similar to poetry in the sense that there is something I want to put into the world and there's something I want it to do. And what I've figured out about that voice when applying it to writing is that there's a lot I can learn from other mediums. For example, one of the friends with whom I do pottery told me when I was starting out that pottery is a forgiving medium. And that idea really stuck with me because I'm like, what kind of medium is writing then? And what does it mean to operate in a medium that is forgiving or a medium that is capable of forgiveness? So I think that, yeah, I learn a lot from other things and that's, I am still learning.
I think the thing that I'm reckoning with right now as I try to write towards a second manuscript or a second book is that poetry, like poetry writing, is just an outcome of the way one lives. And I don't want to like, I don't mean for that to sound moralistic. I mean to say that the poetry, the poetry is the way that I live, or the prayer is like in the act of being, you know, and then, or in the relationship between my being and my awareness of that being, you know. And so that's a convoluted way of saying that I found it difficult to write during the pandemic when my possibilities for movement have been limited to some degree, which is also a way of saying my ways of being are limited. And so I feel like the poetic possibilities have been, you know, limited to an equal proportion. So I'm trying to find a poetics or trying to find a beauty that's can be more like intimately personal, that doesn't rely in the same ways on the social or the relational for its potency. I don't know if it's possible, but I'm really trying to like, dig into the depths of my belly and see what I can extract from that place. And yeah, so we'll see.
Yeah, I'll pick up from there. And yeah, I really appreciate what you're both saying about intimacy and also kind of learning from other mediums. Yeah, I love seeing your experiments and your play in other disciplines, Natalie. Yeah, and thank you, Emmanuel, for this question. I was actually kind of thinking about it a little bit earlier and preparing for today because I was, flipping through my book, trying to decide what to read, and I was a bit like, oh, did I write these? Like, who is this person? And then speaking of meme culture, my friend this morning was telling me about a meme where it said, girls are either in their God phase or their rotting phase. And I kind of feel like I'm flipping back and forth between thinking of right now as the rotting phase or like back then as the rotting phase. Like I'm like having this kind of self-doubt or like self-consciousness about the ways that my writing voice has changed. But of course it has, as much as like there's kind of one monolithic writing voice or something. But yeah, something I've noticed is that in some of my older writing, there's like a directness or like a rawness of the vulnerability. Like I was kind of more often than not, just kind of like saying it how it is and like saying it exactly how I felt it in that moment. And lately there's kind of more like obliqueness, like I'll get there through kind of layering a lot of different images or through the form or through even like what punctuation I've chosen to use or the white space. Yeah, there's like a lot of different tools that I've been leaning on to communicate that feeling instead of like myself saying it directly. And I think maybe that was a response to writing something that was like very intimate and personal, and now leaning more a little bit into like self-protection. And I don't know where exactly that's gonna leave me in terms of vulnerability or voice or whatever, but yeah, I am enjoying also playing with other disciplines and letting kind of movement and choreography or sound and music kind of do things that the language itself then doesn't have to do, or I don't have to lean on it only. Sorry, that's my dog.
I think adding on to that, something that Jody, we've talked about before is also having compassion for that past writing voice or the writing voice that is no longer the voice that you write from. And then, how that voice came out the way it needed to. And I think that's something that I've really had to contend with in writing a novel that has taken over 6 years, where there are parts that I wrote a long time ago, and that I would come back to and have a lot of big feelings about, and and being able to have compassion for that like 6 years ago self who was writing, and understand that like that we change and we grow, and that our work will reflect that, but also that there's this chance to go back and revise, and then also just like thank the past self who wrote that. So I think that's something, Emmanuel, that I've been thinking about in my own writing voice changing, is how how there are many selves present in like the making of a book or a piece of work that takes that amount of time.
Beautiful. What a wonderful note to end on. Thank you again to our 4 poets. Everyone, feel free. If the 4 of you haven't had a chance, people are being very warm and enthusiastic in the chat, so I recommend that you take a peek. But everyone, if we could give one more big thank you to Natalie, Brandon, Janika, and Jody. It was so wonderful, and I'm very grateful that you came to read as part of this series. And also a huge thank you to our very generous audience who has been just bringing such warmth and joy to the chat. And like I said, if you all haven't had a chance to read it, definitely take a peek, because there's a lot of nice things being said about your work. On that note, I'm going to, if you'd like to support these authors, I'm going to drop a link in the chat where you can, so the event registration page will be active until 9 a.m. tomorrow. And through that page, you can buy Natalie, Brendan, or Jody's books. And I'm also going to drop a link. Of course, Janika's book is not yet out, but it is available for pre-order. And one of the best ways that you can support, especially debut authors, is by pre-ordering their work. It really makes a huge difference in how the books are received. So if you want to support these 4 incredible writers, you know, I shared the websites earlier, follow them online, buy their work, and also thank you, of course. Yes, the world premiere of Janika. So support their work. We're so grateful to the 4 of you for being here. And of course, again, grateful to our audience for joining us as well. It's really been a wonderful evening. So thank you. And on that note, I hope everyone has a great night.
Thank you all so much.